Hey, and welcome back. I'm Rob, aka Ship Driver 71, and today we are in the PMDG 737 NGXU, descending into Rio de Janeiro at night. Before we get started with some of the main topics of the video, the first thing I wanted to talk about was some follow-up comments about the PMDG NGXU. In a previous video, I had mentioned that I had a lot of problems loading from save state. And I have since figured out a way that actually, I have not had really any issues loading from a save state recently. And what had happened was for years, I had always had the information text turned off because I didn't want that cluttering my screen, especially if I'm making a video. And just on a whim, I turned it on to see what, GSX and stuff was telling me. And when I loaded a flight from a save state and you unpause it, there's a countdown for the PMDG initializing systems, which I'd never seen before. And I discovered, even though initially the EasyDock camera was way out of position, everything was kind of messed up, and that's what triggered me to, frankly, fool around with it way too much. If I switch to an exterior view, unpause it, let the countdown go down to 0, and the plane goes right back to normal. It's perfectly fine. And I go back to the VC, the EasyDock is right where it's supposed to be. I'm not 30 feet out in front of the airplane, nothing. It just works like a charm. And so, to be honest, I actually have been pretty successful as long as the airplane is in some sort of steady state, cruising or on the ground. I would not do this because there is a period where the aircraft is not really in control, but you have to let the systems initialize and not monkey around with it too much, and preferably, like I said, you're not in a descent or anything like that. You're in cruise, and you are or you're on the ground. And then it's so far for a while, the last few weeks, it's worked like a champ once I discovered that it had that little initialization countdown. Now we're getting closer to the city. The main topic of this video is black marble night lighting. I recently acquired that, and I've been doing a lot of testing in different airports and cities, different aircraft, and I have to say, visually, it is really impressive. It's vector based, so it has in its data all of the roads and everything that really are there, and then it strings the lights along all of those motorways and streets and everything. But the biggest thing about black marble night lights, which is what puts it above every other night lighting I've seen, and certainly above the Orbix night lighting, is the fact that it doesn't shimmer in the distance, even if you are on MSAA, anti-aliasing, which this video you're looking at, the aircraft, the sim is in 8X MSAA. I do that because dynamic lights and things like that have no effect on it. And when you see the black marble night lighting off in the distance, there's no shimmering. And if you look at my earlier video flying into Bogota, Colombia, you see tons of shimmering of the city lights. That's because that's Orbix night lights. And if I were to do that same approach and landing now with the black marble night lights, you wouldn't see any of that. One downside to the black marble lights is, of course, the cost. In order to get what you see here, this is the extended lights pack, which, as far as I'm concerned, is the only really viable product for black marble night lights. But to get that, you also have to have the vector pack and the base pack prior to that. And the price is $175, which for a flight sim add-on, that is stratospheric. Now, to get the full 747 package, you're over $200. So it's like getting a PMDG airplane. I will say that it is a global product, so it's not like one airport that you're spending $175 for. It's not even one airplane. It's a global nighttime product. So if you are flying at night, you are going to be using this anywhere on the planet. And so in that sense, that helps justify the costs. I do wish that, because like I said, in my opinion, the base and the vector packs aren't particularly useful. If you just have base and vector, the lights will go out a certain distance and then it's just black. And then you also have tons of lights popping in and out. It is so frustrating to look at. If you're just doing like screenshots, it might actually be fine. But if you're actually flying or you're doing videos, the vector is not good. It looks great, but its behavior just isn't that good. Extended lights pack, on the other hand, is fantastic. It looks so good. And like I said, it doesn't shimmer in the distance. You see this natural looking road network. There's a variety of colors. You can control how extreme it is. They have, for the extended lights pack, they have economy class, business class, and first class settings. And depending on where you are, you can have some impacts. There were 4 airports that, even with economy class, I really was struggling with frame rates and smoothness, and that was Newark, LaGuardia, Toronto, and Chicago. Those 4, to be honest, it was tough for me. I can't really fly in those places at night. Now, they're not super easy without this either, so there's that. But those 4, real tough. Boston is marginal, but then there's a whole host of cities like Miami and Las Vegas, which you can fly those with economy class. And then medium-sized cities like Austin, Texas, you can be business class or higher in those places. It's no problem, and it looks fantastic. Smaller cities, Pacific Island Simulations, Reno Tahoe Airport, you can be first class there all the way. These lights, in conjunction with PACSIM's buildings in downtown Reno, it is incredible. But it does give you that ability to adjust up and down. You can also specify the level for different road classes as well. One issue I had, it varies in its intensity depending on how populated the area is. If you're doing circuits around one airport, it's almost never a problem, because it's got all the lights loaded in the immediate vicinity of the airport, and you never really run into major stutters or freezes. If you're going point to point, though, if you're flying from one airport to a different airport, even if they're relatively close, like San Diego to Orange County, you're going much faster when you're cruising along, and it's trying to keep up, and it's loading, new lights, and you do get freezes. Especially in heavily populated areas. If it's lightly populated areas, it's not a factor there. But like if I go from San Diego to Orange County, which they're only like 50 miles apart, if that, when it gets up to when I'm on like coming on to final, or I'm on coming around past Riverside and those areas, and it is just, I will get a lot of just real hard freezes while it's loading lights, and then it'll go on. And like in between, the frame rates are fine, but there's these hard freezes. Only happens in very heavily populated areas, and it really happens more at higher lights levels like business class. New York City or Chicago, it doesn't matter what class it is, you're gonna have those issues. And it's especially true in North American big cities, which I think have much more complete vector data. If I go anywhere south of the U.S. border, Central America, South America, even though there's some huge cities down there, they actually are much smoother, and I think it's because there's probably less vector data to populate the lights. But overall, especially with the extended lights pack, it makes you want to fly at night. Like, you really just want to, I'll just fly at night all the time, because it's so beautiful. And it's much more organic looking because he has his vector data, puts the lights where they're supposed to be, and it's just so awesome looking. And like I said, in most places if it's a medium-sized city or smaller, and to be honest, if it's any even large cities in Central and South America, I actually can keep pretty high frame rates, even with more aggressive city settings. I can fly into Bogota with first class lights and be keeping up right near 30 frames a second. So I actually, if you have the means, because like I said, it is a pretty expensive product, buying it is the equivalent of getting like a PMDG airliner and whatever expansion packs there are for those. So it's up into that level for how much it costs. But I think it does add a lot to the sim. And like I said, the biggest difference, besides the fact that it's more organic looking, but the biggest difference physically is the lights don't shimmer in the distance. It looks great. And so it's suitable for any kind of anti-aliasing that you have set in the sim. Paulo Ricardo did the Santos Dumont airport and then also the city itself. So you're going to, a lot of the buildings you see in this scene are buildings that he put in there. They're not the generic autogen. And I actually think that one of his nighttime maps on his buildings are relatively bright and actually meshes very well with the black marble night lighting. Some places like Miami, the downtown Miami and the Miami Beach buildings look almost like there's nobody home. The buildings are pretty dark. The nighttime maps on the models are just really dark, and they look kind of like black holes with all these bright city lights around them. And whereas Rio de Janeiro here, you can see the buildings are pretty bright. They're pretty well lit up at night, and it balances very well with the black marble
landing checklist.
As we come into the approach here, this is an RMP approach. This is the
landing gear.
The 02 right whiskey RMP approach. And I chose this one because it's the most bonkers approach into Santos Dumont. Because you're literally doing like a 180 degree curved approach into the runway, skimming over the top of some mountains as you get in close, and then you're over the water, but just kind of getting below some of the buildings, and you're looking right at Sugarloaf Mountain, which is beautifully lit up, and then bringing it into the airport. Now, if you look at the actual approach plate, it should bring you down, you should be descending into a right-hand turn, and then it turns into a left-hand turn as you go by Sugarloaf, and then gets you onto a straight in to the runway. In the PMDG NGXU, and I'm not sure if it's the fault of the PMDG or if the Navigraph data is bad, but the big curve it makes ends up, when you straighten out, you are way offset to the right. It actually doesn't take you to 02 Romeo. And I'm not sure why that is. The only thing I can think of is either bad data from Navigraph or there's something wrong with the the autopilot systems in
60 knots
PMDG,
checked,
and it's interpreting the information incorrectly. The first couple times I tried it, the first time I tried it, I'm sitting there dive bombing through the city in an airliner. And I actually chickened out way too early and just turned around, went to the airfield, and I was way too high. The second time I tried it, dove, I was like, okay, I'm just going to let the airplane fly it in and see what happens. And it went, way right and way low. Although I will say the approach plate does say the approach does not coincide with the PAPI lights, so you're going to feel like you're super low, but actually you may actually be right on glide path. So, but in the PMDG, you go way wide. I'm going to try it in another aircraft like the Mad Dog and see if it does the same thing. Mad Dog really isn't meant to do RMP approaches. Maybe I'll try and see, my other aircraft are too big, so I'll have to see. But definitely, and you can see it on the display, it's trying to take you way right of the airport. And if you look at the actual approach plate, it's not supposed to be doing that. The last waypoint to the runway threshold is runway heading. So it is supposed to line you up for the runway. It didn't here. And it's super challenging because, like I said, it's a 180 degree turn basically. And you can't see the airport. And then that A pillar there in the cockpit doesn't help. Also, you're going down pretty low, so the airport's actually up above your window, and I actually think it's probably a little easier in a real airplane because you can really move around more, but that was a really tough approach. It's one of the toughest approaches I've ever done. Now, the fact that the airplane was trying to take you off course probably is part of why it was so tough. But it was visually, it's an awesome looking ride, I'll tell you that. If you want a nice tour of downtown Rio de Janeiro, going right by Sugarloaf like that, that's hard to beat. And where we're gonna land is, as I said, Santos Dumont Airport, and it's by Paulo Ricardo, who did the whole cityscape as well. I kind of wish he did the other airport too, but it seems like maybe Tropical Sim has like an ancient version of that one, and he's kind of let that one alone instead of making his own. But actually, he would probably make a better looking one, definitely more modern. Because this airport, it's got the full deal. It's got the dynamic lights, SODI, jetways, PBR. I mean, if it's a if it's a P3D V4 technology, it's got it. But yeah, it's a great airport. I highly recommend this one, especially because the whole scenery of the area is included. But that one approach, that is a killer. Now, there are plenty of other much safer approaches into that airport. Definitely if you're going on the 20 left runway, those are all pretty easy, although you are kind of going through the other airport's airspace. Those ones don't have the massive obstructions of terrain and buildings in the way. But yeah, at nighttime, this is just a fantastic place to go through there. And it's a good way to show off the black marble stuff as well, especially when you're still descending in there and you see the whole cityscape. But really, really gorgeous, both with the black marble lights and with Paulo Ricardo's Rio de Janeiro. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed what you saw. If you did, why don't you give me a like and a subscribe, and we will see you later.